The Metropolitan Police, otherwise known as the Met. Not to be confused with the Metropolitan Museum or anything like that. The Metropolitan Police are an institution that I've talked about several times on the show. In terms of their corruption involving trying to protect Boris Johnson, their ridiculous involvement in the Stephen Lawrence case, which was a thing we watched, if you remember, back way back when, during during Racist White History Month, the case of the young teenager who was stabbed to death in London in the 1990s, and the racist cunts of the Metropolitan Police. By the way, is it 12 minutes past 1 in the afternoon on a digital clock? I think it might be. The Metropolitan Police essentially purposefully bungled the case so as to let the racist murderers off. And most of them still have not been convicted to this day, although I think 2 of them have, which is nice. Anyway, the institutional sexism, the abduction of Sarah Everard, and her unfortunate rape and murder by a serving Metropolitan Police Force member, the institutionalised racism and sexism of the Metropolitan Police. We've covered all of these things on the show. Now, you think an organisation like that had literally, in the recent past, been put into special measures. That is, they were being run so badly that they had to have, essentially, the nanny state go in and, micromanage it because they were so incapable of controlling all of the bigotry involved and all of the malfeasance of their officers. You think an organisation like that might have just a semblance, a scintilla, a tiny microbe of humility, grace, dignity, giving a fuck about their public image? Do you think they might have any of these things going for them during such difficult times? But no, not the Metropolitan Police. They've decided, actually, they're just going to do whatever the fuck they like. And fuck you, because they're the masters. So, as we know, on Saturday, the magic man who's going to put on the magic hat and sit on the magic chair and become king. He's already king. This is pointless, but even so, the royal family are going to do their thing at our expense, as always. And so, understandably, the Metropolitan Police Force, which, by the way, deals with policing in London and terrorism, or should I say counter-terrorism, across the entirety of the country. So naturally, the event in London, which may be the target of terrorism and stuff, you'd understand that the Metropolitan Police Force are going to have to deal with this, right? And so that in itself is not the problem. I would expect, nay, we are paying for them to do so. So, that's understandable, that's fine. It's the way in which they've gone about this. And this tweet shows, for me, is so emblematic of the way in which the British police force, and especially the Metropolitan Police, as the most powerful of those forces, genuinely see themselves as the masters of the people. They're not servants. They're not public servants being paid for by public money, by taxation. No. They're the masters of the thing. That's what they truly believe. And it's hardly surprising given that the government literally tell them that's the case, both in defence of their evil actions and laws being passed to allow them to do atrocious things. Anyway, the offending tweet itself was this one. This drove me fucking insane. Honestly. People, you may have mentioned, you may have noticed in the past that I have a thing where I don't like saying that governments are in power. I like saying that they're in office. Because to say that they're in power suggests that they are the masters of you, that they are the lords to which you are below, when actually it's supposed to be the other way round. And this annoyed me in an even greater way because there is literally no democratic control of the police whatsoever. Not that there's much over politicians, to be fair, but at least there are some votings. Indeed, today people have been voting in local elections. I'll cover that on Saturday with the British peeps. Anyway, the Metropolitan Police said, as part of a long tweet thread about the coronation, etc., etc., they said, our tolerance for any disruption, whether through protest or otherwise, will be low. We will robustly deal with any intent on undermining the celebration. I'm going to try and stay calm. I'm going to try and stay calm during my dissection of these two sentences, but I may fail. There are a number of things which genuinely show that we live in at least a borderline police state, if not just an actual police state. Firstly, our tolerance for. The phrase, our tolerance for. Metropolitan Police Force. Indeed, this goes for all police forces, but strictly Metropolitan Police Force, as this was the force that said this. We don't live at your fucking tolerance. We don't exist at your whim. We have fucking basic rights. We can protest if we so wish. We can state our opinions if we so wish. We don't have to fucking check with you first, you cunts. Our tolerance. Where the fuck do you get off? Where the fuck do you think you get off with this shit? Our tolerance. We don't have to fucking ask your permission to do shit. You're not our fucking masters that get to just dictate stuff. I don't give a fuck for your tolerance. I've seen your tolerance. Your tolerance of institutional racism over the course of decades seems to be quite high, actually. Your tolerance of rapists and murderers in your own fucking police force. And then going and disrupting a peaceful protest to mark to celebrate the life of the victim of that rape and murder by one of your fucking coppers. Your tolerance for that, very high. Your tolerance for domestic abusers in your force is extremely fucking high. So actually, you can stick your tolerance levels up your fucking arsehole. Because I don't care. I don't fucking care. You're not fucking dictating rules of life for people. Fuck you, you fascist cunts. Our fucking tolerance. Fuck you. Right, for any disruption, whether through protest or otherwise, will be low. Again, I'll having mentioned my disdain for their what they do and don't tolerate, I'll leave the will be low part. The conflation of protest and terrorism, basically. Because, again, I've got no problem. If someone tries to do a terrorism, they should be dealt with by the police, that's fine. I'm not entirely convinced that the policy, as will be described later, when I get to it, the shoot-to-kill policy is always a particularly great one, especially given the police's, let's call it Jean-Charles de Menezes problem, where they tend to see innocent people as potential terrorists, chase them into a fucking tube station, and then put 17 bullets in their head. So I'm not sure their shoot-to-kill policy is necessarily always the right one, actually. But let's just put that to one side as well. The conflation of the democratic right of the people to say mean things to people in power and terrorism, which is exactly what you're doing here, whether through protest or otherwise. You're basically conflating protesters with fucking suicide bombers. That is precisely what you're doing, you fascist cunts. If a person wants to go down to the Mall, which is the long road between Westminster and Buckingham Palace, the long one that you'll see thousands of wankers lined up on Saturday, waving their Union Jacks, etc., etc., swaddling themselves in the butcher's apron, so to speak. If someone wants to go down to the Mall with a sign that says, down with the monarchy, they are fucking allowed to do it, and you shouldn't ever try and stop them, you fascist pricks. Again, if a terrorist wants to do a terrorism, stop the terrorist. If a protester wants to do a protest, they're allowed to fucking protest. And again, it's not up to you, your tolerance of protesters. Fuck your tolerance for protesters. You're not the fucking kings, and the king shouldn't be the fucking king either. If someone wants to shout mean words, they are allowed to shout mean words. If they want to stand there with a placard, they are allowed to fucking do it. And they should be allowed to do it. You fucking wankers. We will be robust with anyone intent on undermining the celebration. Now, again, two main things with this sentence. The use of the word, or the words, will deal robustly. We've seen how the police deal robustly, have we not? With, as aforementioned, the storming of and arresting people at the Sarah Everard vigil. The aforementioned John Charles de Menezes. Basically, any interaction you see with the police, generally they're being unnecessarily violent and shitty towards members of the public, because again, they see themselves as our fucking lords and masters, and that we should just follow their every diktat, which is not the way it's supposed to fucking work. So, in terms of deal robustly with, are we going to show that we're a modern, democratic, forward-thinking nation by bundling peaceful protesters into the back of your fucking wagons? Is that the actual message you want to send across, Met Police? Because again, you're on fucking thin ice with the public as it is. The trust in the Metropolitan Police has never been lower. Do you actually want to stop people protesting this shit? Do you think that would be a good, productive, and public relations-wise, a worthwhile thing for you to do? Just think about that for a long, hard fucking second, okay? And intent on undermining the celebration. Now, this brings in a nuanced aspect of this conversation. I personally am totally against the monarchy. I'm against the monarchy, right? And I don't think I should have to fucking pay for it. But other people do think it's okay, and they're okay to pay for it. And the contention will never go away as long as it exists, because I don't want my taxes going towards it. But regardless, some people like it, and they want to have a celebration of it. Fine. Okay. I genuinely, look, I feel... Look, I'm going to take the piss out of the people on the Mall and down the whole route. The bootlickers who are going to say their oath of fealty. They're going to pledge their oath of fealty to His Royal Britannic Majesty with the boot so far down their neck he's almost going to be able to walk on them like a fucking sock, right? I'm going to take the piss out of them. I'm absolutely going to take the piss out of them. But what I'm not going to do is deny that they are going to get some sort of pleasure out of this and like try and deny them their happy moment or whatever, because they're just existing in their own fucking world, whatever. But when you use a phrase as broad as undermining this celebration, you have to be, I think, a lot more precise than that as the police force, because undermining the celebration, if someone stands there and boos, for instance, you're allowed to go boo as a fucking royal carriage goes past. You're allowed to do that. And you should be allowed to do that. That, in theory, could undermine someone else's enjoyment of that celebration. That could put a fly in the ointment of a royalist's enjoyment of that celebratory moment as the Royal Britannic horse-drawn carriage passes. And therefore, you might, under your assumption here of undermining the celebration, be able to arrest that person. And I do genuinely have to ask this of either the Metropolitan Police or any legal scholar that might be listening. What crime would have been committed there? What crime would the person booing have committed? What reason for believing they had committed a crime would a police officer have? The answer is, of course, none. They will have broken no laws whatsoever. At all. In fact, almost certainly there will be countersuits for wrongful arrest. Not that the police care, because again, the individual officers don't pay a penny. The taxpayer, as the funder of the police, will pay out any wrongful arrest suits that go through, right? But either way, what you'll have actually done is deny the democratic rights of a certain section of the population, on the basis that another section of the population believe differently than they do. Which is kind of the beginnings of fascism, actually. It's kind of literally the start of how that goes. But then again, I get the feeling that many police officers don't see the start of fascism as a bad thing. The police are, to put it mildly in this regard, fucking trash. I despise the police at best of times. When they're putting out this kind of fascist shit, and by the way, basically have turned the Metropolitan Police Force Twitter account into royalist propaganda for the day, right? Look at this. Oh look, here I am with Suella Braverman and a horse. Yay, fucking awesome. Keeping everyone safe for the coronation this weekend. Coronation, isn't the coronation awesome? More stuff with the Home Secretary. Oh, look at this. We're going to be doing the security at the King's procession. Isn't that awesome? So basically, I'm paying for royalist propaganda put out there by the fascist Metropolitan Police Force. My taxes are paying for this shit. Fuck everyone involved in this. Honestly. And of course, this comes on the same day. The police, have taken upon themselves broad powers to arrest people for undermining everyone's enjoyment of the day. It comes on the same day that 2 Metropolitan Police Force officers were arrested because yet another woman has come forward about being kidnapped, beaten, and raped by them. Just another 2. Like, you don't even need to know the details in any regard anymore, because there are so many of these instances, it's difficult to tell them apart anymore. Much like in America where, can you tell the difference? Can you remember the exact series of black people being shot by the American police force? No, there's too many to remember them all. In this case, here in Britain, not only are they doing the racism, they're also raping, beating, murdering women. So... lovely. And of course, the Coronation itself, the incredibly sinisterly named Operation Golden Orb. That's the name that's been given to the Metropolitan Police Force's operation for security on the day. Yeah. There we go. Hundreds of police officers were preparing for Coronation with security strategy dubbed Operation Golden Orb. Police from across the country will be at Britain's biggest state event since the Queen's funeral. By the way, I can get some lols in chat for the Queen still being dead. Last September. Officers will line the procession route, blah, blah, blah. Snipers will also be positioned on nearby roofs. Plainclothes officers are set to walk amongst the crowds, in case anyone has a different opinion and needs to be arrested, obviously. A no-fly zone over central London, so, disruption to travel plans, economic disruption, it's all good. Dog teams and a close protection security operation. Police have also spent weeks on a preemptive operation looking at potential threats posed by royal obsessives and looking through social media for intelligence. Awesome. This is a lovely aspect of this as well. I want to focus on this for just a second. Metropolitan officers are set to visit convicted terrorists before the big day and tell them to avoid the celebrations. I'll just repeat that. The super big-brained geniuses over at the Metropolitan Police Force have sent officers... officers are set to visit convicted terrorists before the big day and tell them to avoid the celebrations. Because you know what terrorists always do? It's follow the words of the police. Yeah, just go and ask the terrorist nicely and just say, if you could just avoid the celebration, that'd be cool. That would be awesome. Also, another point on that, apart from the fact that it's stupid and will not work. If these convicted terrorists are in prison, that shouldn't be an issue, right? But if they're not in prison, that means that they've served their time for whatever crimes of which they were convicted, yes? In which case, police, you don't get to tell them what to do in terms of going to or not going to events. Unless, of course, it's within the bounds of, release deals, like the parole. There's some that have parole restrictions placed upon them. But in most cases, that won't be the case. And so, ultimately, if they've served their time, you don't get to tell them to avoid the celebration. What about if they're a big monarchist? Because you say terrorist here. What about if they're a loyalist terrorist from Northern Ireland who wants to celebrate the ascension of His Royal Britannic Majesty to the throne? Are you telling them to not go there? And if you're not, how are you defining which terrorist you are and are not telling to go there? It's almost as if you're just authoritarian scum. Like, for reals. Yeah? There are also concerns over what environmental protest groups such as Just Stop Oil could do to disrupt the procession. Heaven forbid. Detectives are said to be using intelligence on the most active demonstrators that will help prevent disruption. Localised road restrictions, blah, blah, blah. I think we're basically done. The threat posed by each person is then graded high to low based on stalking risk profile by forensic psychologists and psychiatrists, which looked at their behaviour, any prior convictions, and risk of violence. Lovely. Anyway, so the police, who regularly go around harassing, beating, and discriminating against ethnic minorities, women, religious minorities, the LGBTQ plus communities, yeah, they're just going to have a shoot to kill policy. What could go wrong? Anyway, on Saturday I'll be on with various British people. We're going to have a fuck the monarchy Twitch-based gangbanger palooza. It'll be fun. Or not. Also, it'll be starting quite early, so for Americans, apologies, but it's the thing.